Hello and welcome to In the Court of the Wenton Knave. Today we're doing Beat. I should have worn my Beat t-shirt actually. It's very old though and smelly and is in storage, so I thought, nah, this is an interesting one. The second album of the 80s. The story of those three albums isn't an ascension, sadly. You know, the definitive moment's already passed. Doesn't mean this stuff isn't good though. Some of the songs had already been put into the set during the Discipline tour, so it wasn't an unnatural next album in that sense. Most notably, it was a thing called Manhattan, which became Neurotica, which we'll talk about in a minute. It's a concept album, not with a narrative, nothing like that. It's an album that has a concept, and the concept is the Beat generation. And I think that kind of replaces Dylan Thomas for the 80s in a way, and that's the literary thing rather than, and that stylistically informs the music a bit as well. Maybe might be reading too much into it, but you know. But yeah, it's all about one particular book on the road. And when the album came out, you could buy the book and the album came together in a set if you wanted it. What a great idea! I assume it's Baloo's idea, Andrew Baloo's idea. But I think suggested by Fripp, and then sort of Baloo went with it, if you like. But yeah, I mean, it suits King Crimson. It's 80s King Crimson. It brings things into a new space and all that. So that is great. Yeah, it's not definitive like Discipline. Mostly, nearly all excellent songs, nearly all. And Bill Bruford actually thought it was better than the previous album. But it's a bit like The Next Generation. It will never be as recognised as the original. And it's 80s. Or perhaps it's not well recorded, but it doesn't sound as good as Discipline. And this makes a huge difference. And why, you know, the live versions of these tracks are all better, pretty much. An album from this time, you would expect it to sound like that. That's what stuff sounded like, or certainly a couple of years later. Discipline was just a recording in a room, and it's got clarity. Beat is more produced, actually. I think they're self-produced. I think that producer who did Discipline isn't there. I think that's what it is. And there were also problems, which I'll talk about in a minute. I mean, it's absolutely fantastic material. You can understand why Bill Bruford thought this was better than Discipline, because there's some awesome stuff on there. But it sounds wimpy and 80s. You've really got to turn it up to get the energy out of it. You put the live stuff on and it's wonderful. So, you know, it is a fantastic album. It's a King Crimson album because it's a fantastic album. It is a fantastic 80s Crimson album. It's just overshadowed by its predecessor. You know, having the live stuff better than the album version is hardly new. It's always been a thing with a lot of bands. I suppose the argument is, you know, the question was where to go after Discipline, where to go with the Gameland thing. And I think that was a bit tricky. They didn't really know where to take it without repeating themselves. Is it a creative cul-de-sac? I think Neal and Giacomi uses it in a different way. It is still the recognisable thing, but it does do something different with it, something new with it that the Discipline didn't do. There's a suggestion that, you know, they sort of bid to maintain momentum because of all this goodwill that come out of this fantastic album, this fantastic tour, and everyone was loving it so much. Let's do the next album, we've got to do it now. Maybe before they had enough material, and maybe that was part of the problem. I mean, there's plenty, and it's already good. So, you know, you've only got 40 minutes to get on an album anyway. It's possible Fripp saw the writing on the wall already and wanted to, you know, if we're going to do another album, we better do it quick before it all falls apart. You know, if they hadn't done that, maybe there would only be 2 albums, or even 1 album. Just imagine that. If we didn't have the rest of the 80s, what a disaster that would be. And they hadn't recorded on anything from 81. So the question to what's wrong with it is difficult, and to talk about what's wrong with it makes it sound like it's not good, but it is wonderful. Maybe the track listing is wrong, maybe it should open with Waiting Man, or maybe it needs some more improvisations in there, or something like that, maybe. And I think with the next album they did address that, I think. But yeah, there were problems, basically, with Adrian Baloo's position in the band, in that he didn't have a lot of self-esteem at the start. He'd been around a while and not had individual success with solo albums and things like that, and now had all this success with Discipline, which he played such a huge part in. The money was split 4 ways, but then is Bill Bruford contributing as much as Adrian Ballou? No, he's not, is he? So that caused a bit of a wobble. Plus there was an issue with the final track where it all fell apart, actually, which I'll talk about in a bit. So yeah, track 1 is Neal and Jack and Me, as in Jack Kerouac and Neal Cassidy and the other one. Fripp wrote the line, "I'm wheels, I'm moving wheels," apparently, and that was enough to get Ballou started on the road. It's kind of a prog highway star. And obviously the travelling, the touring, they've been on tour, it's all part of that. And the Baloo singing and playing at the same time has got ludicrous. It's just impossible. I have no concept of how he does that. I can learn that stuff and I can play it. It's like Construction Light is the same, but to sing as well and not really in time with, how does he do it? One of the guitar bits is actually in 21 apparently. Perhaps Baloo's playing that and singing in 7/8 or something. Who knows? Yeah, look, I love Neal and Giacomi. And it is a good version of it. Most of the live versions are better, but it is still a great version of it. It's performed well and played well. Bill Bruford did something different with the drumming on the live version, which we'll talk about. It's a similar thing to what happened with Sleepless, I think. Track 2 is controversial because it's a ballad. King Crimson have had ballads. But it's also a pop song. It is both of those things. Cat Food is a pop song, so that's okay, Lady of the Dancing Water is very simple, and Heartbeat is very simple. Brilliant bit of juxtaposition on the album. You think what's around it, and it fits perfectly on the album and all that. And maybe surprisingly, it was played live right till '94, and went down very well live, which I don't quite get why, but it went down well live as kind of an encore thing. Supposedly, Bill struggled to find what to play on that because it's an acoustic song, really, isn't it? That's what I think, anyway. Perhaps that's what it is. But being the 80s, you can't do that. You have to do it full electric with synths. Track 3, Sartori in Tangier. Great instrumental. That sort of harsh landscape of 72 to 74 that is kind of smoothed over on Discipline, it's not there. I think he's on this track. It is King Crimson. But injected with rocket fuel by Tony Levin, it's a more dynamic thing than the do of John Wenton. It's Tony Levin King Crimson, that's a different thing. It's quite a special one, and it's kind of lost in time, I think maybe because of the album not being that well loved, but it is a great one. Essentially a jam, so it's better live, but it's a great version on the album as well. Track 4 is Waiting Man. They opened all the 82 shows with this, all the ones we're going to do anyway. Really like that song, one of my favourites, along with track 1 and track 5. I think they're the best tracks on the album. This is Bill Bruford really using his Simmons synth drums, which he introduced on the previous album, I think. And obviously he got a lot of sponsorship stuff, and he had to go to shows to advertise the drums, which would never work, and all that kind of stuff. Bear in mind, this is 1982, so synths in 1982 are, pretty unreliable. It's funny how obviously the 80s it sounds silly now, but it's strange how the Crimson stuff doesn't seem to have aged like Earthworks has aged, and ABWH, which is quite a bit later, has aged much more. The Crimson stuff is relatively immune to that. I mean, obviously Three of a Perfect Pair suffers more, but still, it stands the test of time in a way that the other stuff, horrible 80s tinny stuff, doesn't. But at the time it was it was the new technology, and you embrace new technology like they always had, Supposedly, Waiting Man, it's reminiscent of Steve Reich's drumming, which I've not heard, so can't comment on that. But yeah, I mean, the question is, why does it stand up so well? And maybe it's partially it was planned to play live, so it's played in such a way as we're going to play this live, and maybe even early on they decided to open the show with it. That world music influence is there. Was an 80s thing and became a cheesy thing, and again it's okay for whatever reason. Live it was great, obviously, or at least in 84, because Baloo and Bruford did the intro, facing each other on the Simmons drums. That's great. And again, like Sartori and Tangier, it's kind of lost on the album. It's kind of in the middle of the album, but doesn't quite seem to have the right track list for some reason. Maybe it should have opened side 2. Maybe Two Hands should have gone at the end of side 1, maybe. So yeah, track 5, oh yes, is Neurotica. Basically, vocals have been added to Manhattan, which was the jam they did on the 81 tour, which we didn't get to hear. I said Discipline doesn't have the heaviness of Old Grim. This does, but with obviously the relentlessness of it, and it's fast as well. So not only is it forward motion, it's doing it fast, which is just awesome. Obviously, it's about cities again, the horror of the big city, which is a recurring theme in King Crimson. I hate cities. I hate London, I hate Paris. Some cities are okay, but generally I'm not a city person. Frank Zappa's quote about London, hate lives here. So you meet individuals and they're nice people. There's no horrible people in London that you meet. It's just hate lives here. It's too many people together, or whatever it is that, Neurotica, the neon heat disease. harrowing and intense, but obviously when the 90s band played it, it was better, because to play it with the double trio, it was just built for that. Amazing they didn't do it early on. Yeah, in the late 60s, obviously Fripp moved to London, so everything accelerated. But in 77, Fripp moved to New York, and everything went. Life speeds up, and obviously with technology and everything that's happened in the world, life has changed, and everything happens really quickly, and no one has any time for anything. And before there was time to read a book. Now there is no time to read a book. I should write a song about that. One of Adrian Belew's best vocal performances, best melodies, and the lyrics in the middle and all that, brilliant. Number 6 is Two Hands. This is the controversial one, I think, more controversial than Heartbeat. A bit like People, the song People, which is, I really like People. It's an Adrian Belew song. It should be on an Adrian Belew album, and maybe now that's more acknowledged. But if that was the material they had, that was what was written at the time, that's what goes on the album, isn't it? A lot of it is Adrian Belew songs, obviously. Whether this fits with King Crimson is a contentious point. I don't dislike it, really. But yeah, the fact that Adrian Belew had a parallel solo career, which it was in his deal, so he needs time to have a solo career at the same time, became a contentious point, because obviously he felt he wasn't being promoted. King Crimson was getting the attention, which is what the record is going to do, realistically, isn't it? The Howler is an interesting one. This was played sort of grinding, slow guitar, really strange melody. Played early in the tour, and I think dropped later on, maybe they had to shorten the sets for the support shows or something like that. I think this one wasn't written beforehand, it was written in the studio kind of thing. And interestingly, it's one of the very few King Crimson songs I don't like. There's Happy Family, The Howler, Model Man, and Into the Frying Pan are the only King Crimson songs I don't like. So that's interesting, I don't know, they just don't do anything for me for whatever reason. It's a good use of noise though. It does work better live, but I just don't get the melody, etc. I don't have to like everything, do I? The final track, Requiem. This is like a generic Crim improv guitar stuff. It's not as good as the 72-74 stuff, and it's trying to recreate it. I think that's the problem. It's deliberately referencing it though, so fair enough. But unfortunately what happened was they did that without Adrian Belew, so Adrian Belew came in and did some overdubs on it, and then so Fripp went in and did some more overdubs on top of that, and then there was a bit of a moment, and Belew told him to leave the studio, told Fripp to leave the studio, so Fripp did a Moody, disappeared for 3 days. The manager, Paddy Spinks, I think, actually went down to Dorset, banging on his door. He wasn't there. Lost him. Eventually came out of hiding, was persuaded to come back, luckily, so we actually got a couple more years out of him. Although really, that was the end of the band. And this is the way Fripp talks about it. The band split up there, but they just carried on anyway. They just absorbed it. Lucky for us. So yeah, it ends on a strange note, this album, but there's some awesome stuff on there. Wish is better live. Stylistically, it's just really cool though, so you should still get it. Remember, most people do like that, so beat. See you next time.